Welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we are so excited to be introducing our brand new die set, Build-A-Toolbox. We're also going to take a look at the latest in our Henry series. This is Henry's Build-A-Sentiment tools and has all the perfect sentiments to go along with that Build-A-Toolbox die set. And it's also a really fun match for our brand new Mice Tools stamp set too. We also have a brand new stencil set. This is our Tool Time Stencils, and it's a set of 2 stencils that gives you a really cool tool-themed background. And we're also going to take a look at our Year 16 stamp set. This is the latest in our year series. Lawn Fawn is 16 years old, which is so awesome, and I absolutely love this cute set. So let's go ahead and check everything out. So let's take a look at the Build-A-Toolbox die set. It has this super cute toolbox and then these little pieces that you can layer behind to add color into those die cut circle openings. We have cute little nuts and bolts and screws that you can add around to help fill your scene. We have a wrench and a ruler, a hammer, and the handle for the hammer. We also have some pliers and the handles for the pliers, and a screwdriver and the handle for that. And these cool tools can be used on their own, or you can add them into the toolbox. First, we're going to work on the toolbox. So we're going to add some adhesive to the back, and then we're going to layer those little rectangles behind those die cut openings. Here we're going to use a darker color of brown cardstock, but I also think metallic cardstock is really fun here, so it kind of looks like there's maybe little nails that have been nailed into the toolbox. And then we're going to start working on the rest of our tools here. So you can see there's these cute handles that you can add onto the tools in different colors depending on the color scheme for your card. On the pliers, you can either have the handles this way or you can flip them going the other way too, depending on the look that you're going for. And then you can take the tools and tuck them into the toolbox. Isn't that so cute? I love how this looks. You can also use the tools on their own, and we'll show you later on in the video. The other thing that would be really adorable is to take one of the mice from the Mice Tool stamp set and have them hold the giant die cut tool. I think that would be so, so sweet. And I love that we have these little nuts and bolts and things because you can lay them around the toolbox to help set the scene. So next up, we're going to take a look at the Tool Time Background Stencils. It's a set of 2 stencils, and you can see that it has etched guidelines there that are going to help you line up all of the pieces. So we're going to start here with a piece of cardstock. I just trimmed this down to be 5.5 by 4.25. And I'm going to take my Tool Time stencil here, and we're going to take the stencil number 1, which is all the kind of metal pieces of the tools. And so for this, I'm going to be using some manatee ink here, and I'm just going to use a really light hand over the stencil so that it's a really nice light gray, and that way it kind of looks like metal. And I'm just going to go over this whole entire stencil. Then we can go ahead and peel up that stencil, and you'll see that we have the first part of our design. Now next we're going to take stencil number 2, and the numbers are etched in the upper right hand corner. And here you can see there's all these etched guidelines that are going to help you line up the stencil. So we're going to take the metal parts of the tools and line them up with the handles. Now here you could just do one color of ink, or you can do multiple colors of inks. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to pick each tool and give each one a color. So I've added some yellow there for the handles of the saw, then I'm going to bring in some red. I think this is lemonade, and then lobster ink, and then I'm going to bring in some fish tank ink. And then for the last of the handles, I'm going to bring in some brown. Those colors were really bright, so I thought some brown, a nice neutral, would kind of help fill in the rest of this background. And so here I'm going in with smaller brushes so that I can just individually color each one. But if I was doing one color across the whole thing, I would just use a big brush for that. And here we have our big reveal. Isn't that the cutest background? I am just in love with this tool background. It's so cute with the Build-A-Toolbox, and it's really cute with the Mice Tool stamp set too. Now, as soon as I saw the stencil, I thought I need to use stencil paste on this because it's going to look like metal. So to do that, I'm actually starting with stencil number 2. I'm going to do all of the handles first because then I want to be able to put my paste over it, and that's going to have like a little bit of dimensionality, and then I can just let it dry. So I'm going to use some dough ink, which is a really nice brown, and we're just going to go over this whole thing, and we're going to have all the handles be the same color. Then we can peel up the stencil, and then we're just gonna line up our stencil number 1. So it's okay to switch back and forth if you're gonna be using some stencil paste. And so for paste here, I'm gonna use this Make Art station board I have because it's a little bit easier to clean when I get paste all over it. And then I'm gonna go ahead and line up the stencil here. So I'm gonna line up the metal parts of the tools with my handles, and then I can use the magnets on this to help hold it in place. And then I'm going to take out my silver paste here and I'm going to spread it all over this stencil with a spatula. And this is going to have such a cool look. You really just need a thin layer. So you can see I'm just really scraping the paste here off the edges and just kind of bringing it all across the stencil, making sure I fill in every single part of all the tools and making sure I don't have too much built up anywhere. So I'm just kind of moving it all around. And then once we have the whole stencil covered, we can go ahead and peel up the stencil and you're gonna see what a cool look this is with this silver metallic paste. And here is what it looks like when it's all dry. Isn't that so pretty? It's such a cool background. And I wanted to show you a comparison to the other background we did with just lots of different colors of ink. So I love that you can get different looks depending on what medium you use on your stencil. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Henry's Build-A-Sentiment tools. Our Henry's Build-A-Sentiment series are these cute stamp sets that have all of these different words on the same size rectangular bases. So all you need to do is just butt them up against each other. They have a natural cling that'll hold them in place. Then you can pick it up with your block and ink it up and create your own fun custom sentiments. All of the Henry sets work on their own, but what's cool about them is that you can mix and match them. So you could mix and match this with the Henry's Build-A-Sentiment family, and you can have it say, "You rule, Dad." So there's a lot of really fun ways you can mix and match things. And so what I like to do is just kind of take a look at the stamp set and peel all my different words and see what can I mix and match. It kind of reminds me of those old magnetic poetry sets. And so here we've got these fun little stamps here, so we're going to start lining them up to create a phrase. The other thing that's really fun about these is you can create long phrases or stacked phrases or create the perfect sized sentiment that you need for your design. So we've just stamped out your tool to Lee the best, which is so much fun. And then now we're going to stamp out thanks for fixing all the things, which I think is so super cute. I love that these are fun for Father's Day, but they're really fun for year round because these puns are just adorable, especially the you rule with the die cut ruler. Like, how fun is that? Here we have an awesome stacked sentiment, and this says, "Thanks for giving me the tools to succeed," which is just adorable. And then here I wanted to show you just another look at some of the other awesome sample sentiments that you could create with this stamp set. These are just a few of the things you can do. You can of course mix and match these to create your perfect sentiment, but I just think it's awesome that there's so many different ways to use it. Now, next up, we're going to take a look at the Year 16 stamp set. And we have this cute little sushi in the stamp set that is just adorable. I'm going to stamp it out 2 times because you can use the sushi on its own or you can add a smiley face into it. So here we have a little party hat, and then here we have these super cute little smiley faces. So I thought it would be fun to show one of them with the smiley face and one of them without. We have 2 different styles of smiley faces, which is really cute if you had like 2 different sushis on your card. And then we also have these little ovals here. These are actually little rosy cheeks, so you could stamp them in a pink ink around the little smiley faces for rosy cheeks. We have some tiny phrases. We have happy birthday and we have a rice day. And then we also have some larger sentiments. So we have it's your birthday. And then we also have let the good times roll, which is so super cute. I just love the pun. So now that we've stamped out this stamp set, we're going to start adding color with our Copic markers here. These are alcohol-based markers. Any alcohol-based markers would be great. Colored pencils, watercolor, or coloring stencils too. And I'll show you the coloring stencils in just a little bit. Here I am going and adding in some dark green onto these cute little sushis. You can see I went outside the lines there. I'm just going to use my colorless blender to kind of help erase that. I wanted the green to be a little bit darker, so I just covered it up with some gray markers to help make it a little bit darker. So the one on the left has gray over top and the one on the right doesn't. I thought that was kind of a cool look with the gray over the green. I added some little warm gray dots onto the rice part, and then I'm just going to add some fun pops of color onto all of the other things that are inside of our sushi roll here. And then, of course, for the hat, we need to add some cute rainbow colors here. So we're going to do a fun little rainbow hat with little purple streamers on top. And aren't those guys so, so cute? Now, next up here we have the coordinating dies, and all you need to do is just line them up with your stamped image, hold them in place with some low tack tape, and then we'll run it through the die cut machine and we'll have perfectly cut out images every time. I love this little sushi and I love the adorable party hat that they come with too, and of course you can layer that on to create a fun birthday look. Next up, we're going to take a look at the coloring stencils, which are a set of 2 stencils. We size all our coloring stencils to be the same size of the stamp set so that it's really easy to store together. And all you need to do is just line it up with your image and then brush on some ink. What's really cool about the stencils is they have etched guidelines, so it makes it really, really easy to line them up. Here you can see I'm adding a little bit more ink on the left side and the right side and keeping it lighter towards the center so that it kind of has a fun little dimensional look. Next, we can line up the rice part, and here I'm just going to do a little bit of light gray. Whatever was left on my gray brush, I'm just going to brush that on just to give it a little bit of texture, and then we can work our way down the rest of the stencil. So I'm going to add some green here. I'm using jalapeno here, and then we can move our way down here. Here for this one, I think I'm using whatever was left on my pink brush, and then whatever was left on my orange brush, and this turns out so pretty. Now, next up, Chari is going to create some incredible cards using all of these new products. So, take it away, Chari.
So for my card today, I'm using the new Build-A-Toolbox die set, which is really fun. I've cut out my toolbox and all of my tools here out of various colors of cardstock. And I really love all these little nuts and bolts. I cut those from silver glitter cardstock, so we have a little bit of shimmer and they look like shiny metal. But before I glue my pieces together to build my tools, I'm going to add a little bit of shading with some Copic marker. So I cut out the base of all the tools that you see here from narwhal cardstock. And I am just taking some toner grays in a darker and a lighter color and just adding a little bit of shading just to give these tools a little bit of dimension. And some of these obviously have other parts we're going to add to them, like the pliers here. So I only need to shade the part that we're going to see that's gray. I don't need to worry about the handles because we're going to cover those up with some fun colored cardstock. So for my hammer, I have peacock. For my screwdriver here, I have raspberry. And then for my pliers, I'm going to use cilantro. So this is a very fun rainbowy box of tools. You could always put these in the favorite color of the person you're giving this to, but I find that just tools in real life probably aren't this much fun. So I think it's fun that we can create some fun colors with our tools. And then of course, because we added a little bit of shading to the gray metal parts of our tools, we need to add a little bit to our colorful parts as well so that they don't look flat and they have a little bit of dimension as well. So I'm just basically going down one side of those handles and giving a little bit of shadow in a coordinating marker color. For this one, I blended it out a little bit more. I had kind of a harsh line, but as that marker dries, it really does give just a nice soft shadow. And then of course we have our ruler. This is cut from sunflower cardstock and I'm just adding a little bit of shadow on it as well. Now for the toolbox itself, I cut this from paper bag cardstock, so we have a nice wooden toolbox. And I'm just going in with a darker brown and just kind of highlighting those slats that go across that toolbox. So you can see I'm kind of following those lines that the die creates a little bit on the handles. And then I am going to actually use this piece that I cut out of storm cloud cardstock and trim off the handles, or I should say the upright parts that hold the handle, and we're gonna glue this right over where the handle is. So it's kind of like a cover on the handle. So we have a comfort grip on this toolbox. There's also these pieces right here that layer behind the holes that hold the little slats together. And those are just cut from some black cardstock to fill in those holes. So now I'm going to work on the background of my card. I cut a piece of watercolor wishes with the stitch rectangle, and I also used a rounded stitch rectangle to cut a panel of Favorite Flannel Fall and some peacock cardstock. And I'm going to stamp my sentiment using the new Henry's Build a Sentiment Tools stamp set. And I like this one because there's a lot of fun sentiments and punny sentiments you can make with this stamp set. For this card, I am building the sentiment that says, "Thanks for fixing all the things." And I think this would be perfect to give my dad for Father's Day or basically any day when he comes and fixes all the things. It's perfect for that person in your life that is Mr. or Mrs. Fix It for sure. So I'm just stamping this in black ink along the bottom of that peacock cardstock. And this is a little taller than I need it to be. So once I have that stamped, I'm just going to trim this down a little more than an inch. And this is going to give me a place for my toolbox to sit. So I will go ahead and add this to the bottom of my plaid panel here. And I love that these colors are basically the same. That peacock really goes well with that pattern paper. And then I can add my yellow paper to my card base. This is going to completely cover it because I use the largest stitch rectangle. And we're going to get that yellow border around this rounded rectangle panel. And I really love all the bright colors that this card ends up having. So now we need to fill our toolbox with our tools. And I kind of did that off of the card. So I kind of filled it first so I could add my glue to hold things in place. I could flip it over, add a little bit of glue to the back, and use my tweezers as well. And I'm just filling my toolbox with all the fun tools that we have here. So for this card, I'm only putting the hammer, the wrench, and the pliers in the toolbox. And I really like that you can put them in front of the handle. The pliers, I let one of the handles of the pliers hang over the side, which I think is a really cute look, just like it's been hung on the side of the toolbox. But once I have all those secure with some liquid glue, I can add some foam to the back of this toolbox full of tools and we will put it on the card. And by the way, those foam strips are perfect to go on the back of the handle of the toolbox. It just fits there so perfectly. And I'll just pop this right into the center here, right above my sentiment. And then the other tools I have are my screwdriver, which I put a little piece of foam behind the screwdriver head, and I'm going to add some liquid glue to the handle so that it can overlap the box and kind of look like it's been sat on the tabletop. And then I thought it was fun to kind of lean the ruler up against the toolbox for a fun look. Now we have all the fun little screws and bolts cut from that silver glitter cardstock, and I'm just going to sprinkle them around. They are my embellishments on this card. So, normally we have sequins. Today we have nuts and bolts and screws. So these are going to give me some little pops of shimmer on my card. So I'm putting them like they're on the tabletop as well. I will add some kind of sitting on top of the toolbox and on top of the screwdriver here. And then I have one more that I haven't used, and I'm actually going to tuck it behind those pliers, kind of like it has been thrown into the toolbox and it's just kind of sticking out there. And because I'm me and I love some glitter, I'm adding some magic to these tools. These are magical tools with a little bit of glitter, but I also think the glitter makes them shimmery and shiny just like metal. So here is my finished card with the Build-A-Toolbox die set and the new Henry's Build-A-Sentiment tools. So for this card, I'm going to use just the tools from the Build-A-Toolbox die set. So not the toolbox, just the tools. You can see I've cut them out here out of colored cardstock. And I am making a Father's Day card. I have stamped my sentiment and colored it. This sentiment comes from the Mice Tools stamp set. And you can see it's nice and long and skinny, but it has a die that cuts it out. So I can cut this out and it cuts all three words separately. So I'm actually going to stack them vertically and get a different look out of this sentiment. So I'm just lining this up and holding it in place with a little bit of low tack tape, run that through my die cut machine, and now I have three separate words that spell out Happy Father's Day. So to create a background on this card, I have a piece of speckled eggshell cardstock cut with the largest outside in stitch rectangle, and I'm going to use the new Time Background Stencils to create my background. This is a two-part stencil set. They are numbered in the top right corner, and I'm starting with stencil number 1. Now stencil number 1 is going to color in the heads of the screwdrivers, the hammer heads, the saw blades, all the things that would normally be a metal color. But I want my background to kind of have a colorful tone to it and look like tone on tone. So I'm using merman ink, and I went all over with merman. And now I'm coming in with manatee to kind of give this merman a gray tone. And as this dries and these two dry together, they're going to be much lighter and much more subtle. Now I can pull this off. You can see I kind of have a bluish gray going on. Then I can line up the second stencil. It has etching lines, so they are easy to line up. Again, that number 2 is in the top right corner, and I'm going back with that same merman ink. So this gives me 2 tones, but not 2 different colors necessarily. So I didn't have to find 2 shades of aqua. I just kind of made one more gray. And as this dries, it will lighten up a little bit, and those shades will get a lot closer to each other. Now for a little bit of shimmer, I am adding some gold metallic splatters to the background. And once I get that looking the way I like it, I will just set that aside for those paint splatters to dry. But I just think this is fun because when it hits the light, you get a little shimmer of gold. Now that's dry, I've let that sit, and I can add it to my card base. I'm using a craft cardstock card base so that I have a little bit of a frame around the background. And then I've cut a rounded rectangle panel out of mermaid cardstock, and this is where my sentiment is going to go. But before I put all these things on here, I'm actually going to use some twine to create some fun texture. So I've put foam tape all over the back of my panel, and I am going to grab the latte hemp twine, and I'm just going to start kind of looping it around and sticking it to this foam tape. And I want it to peek out on all the sides of this panel, so it kind of looks like this panel has fallen onto a pile of tools and twine and everything on a workbench. So I'm just kind of working around. You can see I'm looping it. And I just want to make sure that it is going all the way around and I get a nice even look of this twine sticking out on all sides of my panel. And then I'll just secure the tail to the back. And when I put this onto my card base, I am actually going to use a little bit of liquid glue because I know I have those foam tape pieces, but I have all this twine on top of it, and I want to make sure that this stays nice and stuck down to my background. This will also allow me to kind of move it around a little bit and make sure it's nice and centered. And I'll just put a block on that while that liquid glue dries and sets. So now that that panel is secure on the front of my card, I'm going to add my sentiment right in the middle. I'm starting with the center line that says Fathers, and I did put a little piece of foam strip on the back so that this sentiment is popped up off of that panel. So we have a lot of dimension on this card. Then I'll line up the happy and the day, and I have a perfectly centered sentiment. Now I do need to build my tools over here. I need to put those colorful handles on a couple of them. So for my hammer, I use some paper bag cardstock for the handle so it looks like wood. For all the metal pieces, I either use narwhal or storm cloud. I kind of mixed it up so they weren't all exactly the same color. I use blue jay for the screwdriver, and I use lobster for the pliers. And then basically I'm making a frame of tools around my sentiment. So I'm using some foam when the tool overhangs the side of my rounded rectangle panel. And then I'll just use liquid glue for the rest of the tool where it touches the panel. And I just thought this was a really fun look to kind of frame the sentiment with all these fun tools. Once I get my tools in here and I've completely surrounded my sentiment, I have a few more fun things to add. So we have screw heads, we have bolts, and we have screws that you're looking at them kind of from the side. I also cut those from a variety of gray cardstock. So I have narwhal and I have storm cloud, and I'm just sprinkling those around. These are my embellishments on a fun masculine card like this. So I'm just sprinkling these around like I would do sequins or my little hearts. And then finally, I wanted to add a little bit of glitter to the tools to make them shiny and stand out, but you can leave this off if you want a more masculine look. You don't need to add the glitter. It's just a personal preference. And then here is my finished tool Father's Day card with the tool time background and the Build-A-Toolbox tools without the toolbox, and I just think it turned out so fun. So I wanted to show you a different idea for the toolbox. I'm using the new Big Blossom flowers. I've cut them out of white. We're going to make some classic daisies. And then I'm using the toolbox without the tools to hold my cute little flowers. So I cut my toolbox from lilac cardstock. We're going to have a purple toolbox today, and we want to decorate it a little bit. So I'm using the new Spring Flowers stencils. Now this is a 3-part stencil, but we're only going to use 2 of the 3 stencils on this. So I'm just lining this up, and I'm using some fresh lavender ink, and I'm not going all over with these flowers. I'm just kind of going in this top right corner, and then I'll do some in the bottom left corner. And I just think this is really fun. It looks like we've painted our flowers on. Now I skipped stencil number 2, which is the center of the flowers, and I'm going on to stencil number 3. There is etching, so all you have to do is line those flowers we've already stenciled up with the etching, and we're going to add a few little leaves with some celery stick ink. And then here is our decorated toolbox, or I should say our decorated flower box. But we're not done yet. I wanted to add even more details to this flower box, and I decided to bring in one of the new washi tapes. I love this washi tape. I am a sucker for some gingham, and especially a tone-on-tone gingham like this. So I am just putting this on a piece of white cardstock, and then I'm going to take my toolbox die, and we're just going to cut the handle out of this. So I thought this would be fun to add a decorative handle, so I'll just trim off those vertical pieces, and now we have just the piece that goes across where we're going to hold that toolbox if we were carrying it around. I just think this is a really fun decorative detail. Now I do need to add the 2 little pieces on the back that fill in the holes. I cut these from Storm Cloud cardstock, so it's a dark gray. It's going to fill in those little nail holes on the front of the box. And now I'm moving on to my background. So I have a piece of speckled eggshell cardstock cut with the largest postage rectangle stackable. I'm using the coordinating stencils. This has an etching line so you can line it up with that postage stamp detail on the outside, but it's going to mask off the edge so that we only ink in the center. Then I'm using my grass stencil, and I'm going to add some grass to the bottom with celery stick ink. Then I'm going to shift this down, and now my stencil is going to act as a mask, keeping my merman ink off of my grass. And I'm actually going all over with this merman ink. So you can see there when we use that masking stencil how it's keeping that postage edge nice and clean, and we're only getting our ink inside that stitching line. So I'm going all over with this. It does look a little splotchy, but as it dries, it will even out. But we're going to add some clouds to this. So I have the Stratus Cloud stencil, and I am going to pull in my Yeti ink. Yeti ink is a pigment ink, so it is white pigment ink. And I have a tool that I dedicate just to this ink. And instead of going round and round like we do with brushes, I'm pouncing this through the openings of the clouds. And this is going to give me some nice, soft, white clouds on top of this merman ink. They're going to be nice and subtle, and they're going to look great in the background. So I'm just pouncing around, making sure I fill in all of those clouds that are in my sky. And then when I pull this off, you will see the reveal of those clouds. Now they're very white right now. As they dry, they will kind of disappear a little bit, not completely disappear, but lighten up, I should say. So I will set that aside to let that pigment ink dry, and I'm moving on to my daisies. So of course these are cut out of white cardstock. Then I cut these centers out of some yellow spiffy speckles. I just think that's a really nice buttery yellow and looks great on these flowers, very springy. And once I have those glued on there, I'm adding a little bit of coloring, just some dots of color, just to kind of shade at the bottom of those centers of the flowers. Then I can bring in my stems, and I cut those out of green spiffy speckles. We're going to address the leaves here in a minute, but we want to add these to the stems so that we can tuck them into our toolbox. So I'm just adding a little liquid glue on that top piece and sticking each bloom onto my stem. So now I'm ready to start putting my flowers in my cute little flower box. And I actually use that washi tape to help hold the stems in place on the back side. No one's ever going to see this, so that washi tape's going to work great to hold it in place. I also added a little dot of glue on the back side of the handle to hold the stem of this daisy. And then I can tuck in my leaves. I love this really tall daisy coming out the side. Then we're going to put one back here, and don't worry, that one that I haven't put on there yet, it's going to kind of go in the front, so you can make it look like there are flowers behind the handle and in front of the handle and make it look very three-dimensional. So that's what I'm doing with this one here. This one goes in front of that handle. I love those little blooms kind of hanging over. And we'll add a couple more leaves to fill in. I really like this leaf here, how it's kind of peeking out and over the side of the toolbox. Now I'm not done decorating yet. I thought it would be fun to tie some twine around this, and it's really easy to tie it right where those little slats of the toolbox are. So I've wrapped this coral twine around twice, and I'm going to tie it in a little bow, which really makes this look like it is a bouquet that you are giving to somebody, with a bow around the vessel that our flowers are in. And I also added a little heart to my box as well. So just a little dot of glue down here and a little tiny guava cardstock heart. And I just love those pops of pink on there. So I want to stamp my sentiment, and I decided to go with a sentiment in the All the Garden Hats stamp set that says sending you some sunshine. I love this sentiment. I love the font, and I think it is perfect to brighten anyone's day, and it really goes great with the flowers for spring. So I have just put my panel with my stenciling and my inking that's all dry now into my Misty, and I'm stamping this in some black ink. Then I will add my flowers with foam. I'm not going to add them just yet. I do need to put this panel onto my card base first. And I'm using a craft card base so that we have that kind of craft frame, and I think that goes really nicely with that speckled eggshell cardstock. So now we're ready to add our toolbox or flower box full of flowers. I put foam all over this. You can see I have little pieces of foam behind every little petal. I wanted it all to be nice and supported when I put it on my card. And then the last thing this card needs is just a little bit of glitter. I added some glitter to the little pink heart. I added glitter to parts of the center of the flowers. I didn't even go over the whole thing, just kind of at the top. And then I pulled a little bit of glitter from the flower center down the petals a little bit. And then here is my finished springy card with that Build-A-Toolbox, but thinking of it in a different way. And I just love the way this turned out. So let's create a card with the new Year 16 birthday stamp set. I love these cute little stamp sets that we have every year for our birthday, and this year the theme is sushi. So I have colored and cut out two of the cute little sushis and the little party hats and a cute little sentiment there in the bubble. And I'm also using the new giant outline Yay. So this creates an outline which I've cut from some really rainbow stripe paper, and then it creates the solid to layer behind, which I cut from storm cloud cardstock. So let's just go ahead and layer these two pieces together so you can see this really fun sentiment come together. I really like that we have this really big sentiment, and it really fills a card nicely. And of course it says yay, which how fun is that? So I'm just going to layer this over top, and you can see that we see that solid cardstock through the center of all the letters. Now we do need to add the center part of the A, but that's really easy to do, to just line up with that base piece that we have. And since it all cuts as one, my stripes are going to line up perfectly. And then we have the little dot for the exclamation point, which we're just going to make sure that we line up our stripes in the same direction when we add this to our card. Now I want to go ahead and pull my sushis over here. Now these are the exact same stamp, but depending on the face you want to use and where you stamp it, I made two little sushis that are looking towards each other, and I can add their little party hats. Now I want to stamp the sentiment that says it's your birthday to go under my big die cut yay, and I'm just stamping this on a white sentiment banner. So now I'm ready to assemble the pieces of my card. And I have a craft card base. Then I have a piece of really rainbow pattern paper. This is the one that has the rainbow notebook look, and I cut that with the postage rectangle die. I also have the doily hearts die and a circle that fits in the center. So the heart doily is cut from mermaid cardstock, and then the circle in the center is cut from the new mist cardstock. I love these two colors together. And I'm just going to pop this right into that postage stamp rectangle, and I'm just lining up between the hearts, top and bottom, to make sure they're straight. Now I've put some foam squares all over the back of my two little sushis and my little sentiment bubble. I'm just going to lay these other sentiments down here for placement so I can see how high I need to put my little sushis. Then I can add my little sentiment up there that says "Have a rice day," which I just think is so cute. And then I'm going to take my foam strips and add them all over this giant yay sentiment. That will pop this up, give it some nice dimension, and really kind of go with those sushis that are popped up too. So I'll just put that on there. Then we have our little dot, and we want to make sure that those stripes are lined up in the right way. And then I have a strip on the back of my sentiment that I'm just going to tuck right here to finish the sentiment so it says, "Yay, it's your birthday." And of course, we need our sparkle. I just added a little bit to some of the stripes and the little detail at the top of the party hats. And then here is our finished birthday card with that new year 16 stamp set. Super simple and quick, and I love the rainbow colors. It's perfect for a party.
This card is so cute, Chari. I love the rainbow effect and how the doily looks almost like a little plate. And then this card that you made with the toolbox is so much fun. I love all the detail that you added onto the tools with your markers. And then I love that the tools are really great on their own too. And that tone-on-tone background with the new tool time stencils looks amazing. And then this is my absolute favorite. You took the toolbox and turned it into something totally different, and I can't wait to make a card just like this one. And next up, we have some incredible cards by the design team, and this one by Elise is so cute. I love how she lined up the tools and layered the sentiment over top. This card by Callie is so adorable. I love the background she created and how she used the pegboard out of vellum for a backdrop for her toolbox. This card here by Lynette is so sweet. I love how the tools are kind of falling out of the toolbox and that the screws and nuts and bolts are all over the place. It's so fun. And then this card by Tammy. She turned the toolbox into a whole painting toolbox. Isn't this so cute? I love how she also used the fox with the little paintbrush and the palette. I just love this. This card here by Audrey is so much fun, and I love that she used that giant outline yay with this super cute, awesome punny sentiment. And then this card by Grace is so cute. She used the tools with the brand new mice tools, and I love how she layered the pegboards too. It is such a fun look, and the colors are just adorable and perfect for a Dad's Day card. This card here is adorable. I love how she used all white ink to create the background. Nania is so clever. This card here by Mindy is so much fun, and she used the tool time stencils in gray to create a subtle background, and then the scene with all the mice around the toolbox just make me smile. This card by Melissa is so much fun, and I love how she used the new workshop backdrop as a great place to place her tools. Lynette created such a super cute card by combining this with our Soy Happy stamp set. And then this card by Megan is just adorable. I love how she used this backdrop to create cute little scenes. Here, I love that Letitia layered all the cute little sushi in this card, and the green background is just gorgeous with them. And then this card by Chari is so much fun, and I love how year 16 is a great match to our Soy Happy stamp set. So we cannot wait to see all of your tool theme cards and your birthday cards, so make sure to share them with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!